Hi everybody. We'll be talking about React Native and topics related to React Native in general. So I think we can start off with introductions. Uh, Peter, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Peter Lasser. I'm work as a founding engineer at Savage.club, and I primarily basically lead the mobile team here. And you know, I've been working with React Native for around like 4 or 5 years now. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. And how do you use React Native like on a day-to-day basis? Like,
So our primary product is a mobile app targeting both Android and iOS, and then that's where I primarily use React Native. Uh, we have a web presence, but it's mostly uh, just a small React app right now. Kind of looking into how to move most of our React Native code into the React web app.
great. Muslim, next.
Hey, hi everyone. Thanks, Anantu. So, hi, my name is Maskeen. I have been working with React Native for about the last 6 years, ever since React Native first came out. I currently work in Microsoft where I don't get a lot of React Native exposure, but I've played with React Native for the last 6 years while I was at Flipkart, and I still do keep working on React Native as a part of my side projects and hobby projects and keep doing development on the side. On a day-to-day basis, I try to keep up with the advancements that are happening in the world, new libraries that are coming up, and seeing what advancements are happening everywhere, like what people like Nishan and Anantu and Peter are doing with React Native these days. So that's kind of what I do on a daily basis with React Native. Thank you.
Great. Nishan.
Yeah, so my name is Nishan. I'm working at Showtime. So we are working on a single code base that runs on Android, iOS, and web. And yeah, currently I'm working on a UI library there that's called Universal UI. And yeah, and we are sharing code across all the platforms. And in my free time, I love to dig into open source libraries around React Native and also React Native Code.
Great. So you mentioned code sharing, right? So what do you use Expo in your company?
Yeah, so we are actually using Expo and all of its latest features. So Expo has improved exponentially in the past year, and so yeah, we are using Expo extensively. Yeah, on Android apps.
I'm guessing that's
Right,
what
right.
the short form for exponentially would be. It's Expo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it stands for exponent. They used to be called exponent for a while.
Nice.
Then they
Right.
kind of shortened to expo.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right. So what are your guys' thoughts on like using Expo versus using like a bare React Native project?
Yeah, should I go first?
Yeah, Mushan.
Uh, yeah, so Expo. So when Expo was released, there were some limitations that if you want to add new dependency or new native dependencies, then you had to eject out of Expo, and after that you won't be after that upgrading Expo that would be a bit difficult. But with recent release, I don't think that's a lot of difference with bare React Native and new Expo, because you can essentially eject while staying still under Expo using new updates like Expo Dev Client. So that is just like a bare React Native app, and yeah, you can add all of your native code. You can add your own library, uh, like yeah, without losing all the Expo updates or Expo future updates.
Right.
Right.
One thing I would
And
like
yeah,
to add to that is like when you use Expo, right? The problem of adding new packages becomes very trivial, right? So let's say you have to add something like React Native Maps. You go into Gradle for which has both native dependencies on iOS and Android as well as JavaScript. You end up going into three different places, making sure the integration is fine at a bare bone level, and then start working on it. Like that's easily like a couple of days, 3 days worth of effort. But Expo, you just add a project and it just works seamlessly out of the box in all platforms. So that reduces the problem by a lot of margins, right? So that's one crazy thing that Expo gives to developers. That's been my experience, more or less.
Yeah, and recently Expo has become much more modular. So even if you're not bought into the the full Expo ecosystem, you can still use certain packages,
Right.
uh, and then you can be most like fully certain that those are going to be maintained in the future too. So, for example, we use Expo AV for our video and audio playback uh, capabilities rather than something like React Native Video. I don't know if you guys follow React Native Video because it's kind of been deprecated and kind of
Right.
stagnating for a while. Whereas something like Expo AV has had like frequent updates, bug fixes, uh, and almost all their packages are like top quality. So even if you don't want to fully buy into the Expo ecosystem, you still can get like take leverage a lot of the modules themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, yeah, Expo has contributed a lot back to React Native as well, like in terms of community packages, in terms of ease of development, and also I think they've contributed a lot of code onto the upstream React Native project as well. And I think until recently they were maintaining a fork of React Native, but then recently they have moved back to like just maintaining the public React Native system. So hints towards like a more stable uh, release of React Native. So yeah, I think Expo has contributed a lot. And Nishan, are you guys using like the cross-platform abilities of Expo by any chance, like web or desktop apps?
So yeah, I mean, currently we are using a regular Next.js app, and yeah, and not like the Expo one. So Expo has like few plugins that we can include in your Next.js app, and that will like so basically those plugins include some configs that are required for React Native Web uh, to work like without like without adding like manually all those configs, because those are like a bit hard to configure like manually, like you have to go into Webpack and add some certain configs. So all that is provided by like simple like Expo Next plugin, I think that's what it's called.
Right.
So yeah, we are using that, and yeah, but it's a like plain Next.js application, and but yeah, we are using that plugin, so that handles all the like bundle complexities for us.
Nice.
Nice.
And Peter, Muslim, like do you guys use any of the other Expo things that come with it?
No,
Uh,
unfortunately, I've not played around with Expo Web, but I guess there is a couple of libraries which makes navigation work well with Expo Web and React Native. I think uh, the name slips my mind right now. Nand Nando Rojas is working on
it's Solito.
yeah, Solito, which is a router, that will kind of abstract out the routing logic for your React Native and web apps. So there's some interesting stuff happening in that space. Uh,
Right.
Looking forward to it, with, because for us at least, uh, it looks like there's a lot of the code that we write for a React Native app can be like fully shared for the web, and
Yeah.
routing would be routing animations etc would be like a good step forward for that.
Yeah. One more thing with Expo that comes out of the box, I mean, it's always it's already priced, but the EAS feature that they came out with, right? Let's say you have to publish your app to an app store or the Play Store, right? You have to go through different licensing, different everything, and different times for reviews and different publishing times as well, right? So all of that gets abstracted out at the EAS level, where they push out updates to the Play Store within a day, within minutes, right? And that from their own console, right, from their own CLI as well. So that is something that is, I mean, abstracts out again the systems that you would have to care about if you're developing two different platforms using one single code base, and that is one interesting thing that Expo came out with. And like we were discussing about Expo being used so very often in all of these scenarios and well tested, I think there's another pain point that we can touch upon when using Expo is how easy it makes React Native upgrades, right? I was talking to Nishan in the afternoon how easy React Native upgrades can become with Expo, right? So that is also something that we can talk about right now.
Yeah. So anyone has any upgrade stories? React Native upgrade?
3 weeks we
I think,
upgraded from, I think 30 to 49, so 19 versions at once, and it took us like a month with no surety that it's going to go well. So that was extremely crazy. But over to you guys. I mean, you guys must have similar story.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I went from 0.58 to 0.64, uh, which is where the auto linking support came in,
Oh
and that
yeah.
was like insane. Like we had a lot of manually linked packages. So in the end, just created a new repo, copied code manually, corrected the diffs. That's just what worked. And our current strategy is to hold off updating until like two releases. So if you're on 0.66, we
Hmm.
only go into, or if you're on 0.64, we only go to 0.66. We skip the
Oh,
0.65 release so that you don't go through the pain every month.
right.
But I have to say that it's become much easier over the years with upgrade helper, and if you don't have a lot of native customization, uh, it's definitely become easier over the years. But
That's
yeah, I
true.
mean, with Expo, it's just change the version number and you're done.
Right.
So you can't beat that.
And also
So
Expo provides a nice CLI to tell you if some package is incompatible or maybe you have
Right.
to look into it. So yeah, that made the dev experience very smooth.
yeah, I mean,
Got it.
recent upgrade from like SDK 44 to I think right now it's 45
45.
of
Yeah.
Expo. Yeah, so it was like seamless upgrade. I mean, we were on 0.64 in that Expo SDK, and now we are on 68. So it was like it was done in like few hours. So that was really cool. And yeah, I mean, so with like this new Expo Dev client, we so Expo Dev client is basically like so in earlier versions of Expo, we whenever we build an app on native side, there were some like SDKs, native SDKs, which will go into that build, right? But in new Expo, if you are using just Dev client, then only those native code will go into it that you are using. So
Hmm.
that's also really cool and feature of dev client. So
So one
Nice.
interesting workflow with dev client is, uh, since the dev client has all the native code, in it, you could actually now start distributing the dev client to developers. So people can actually, people with a Linux system, for example, they can develop for iOS with all your native code. That you can skip out the compile step completely. Uh, or basically or with React, just web developers, right? You can give them an APK or a way to install the IPA through, I don't know, Firebase app distribution or something,
Right.
and then they don't even have to think about the compilation steps anymore. They can just start writing JavaScript. So that's like a killer feature for dev client. I don't know how many people have used it. I've played around with it, but I don't have a use case for it at my workplace because everyone uses a Mac, and that's all native, like a couple of native developers uh, over here. So I think that's really cool. And the same workflow will work for QA testing also. You can give out the build dev
Hmm.
client to QA engineers, um, and if they have signed into their Expo accounts, they can pick release channel, like if you have staging dev or whatever else, and then continue from there. It's like instant deployments for QA. So it's some
Right.
pretty cool stuff. The Expo guys have not, I don't know, at least to me it feels like they have not published or advertised this too much. Uh, in fact, they should. I mean, it's a pretty awesome feature. Dev clients are cool. You guys, all of us, you should really check it out.
Interesting. So does this basically mean JavaScript updates, or does it mean native updates? I mean, just like
No,
how code.
it'll only work for. So think of it like this way. Earlier, you had the Expo Go client,
Hmm.
which is which had all the Expo native
All
packages
the
installed, the
packages. Right,
animated
right,
maps, all of it, right? Expo Dev client is a customized Go client,
right,
right? Uh, uh, you can only include all the packages that you need, so that the binary size is small, and you can also add third-party native packages, which are not
right,
first-party, first-class Expo citizens.
right.
So when there is a native change, of course, you have to now update the dev client. Uh,
Hmm.
but for any JS change, it just works like code push.
Right, right, right.
It's like just a simple command. We are using this feature for internally distributing the distributing the builds. So it's just like a simple expo es build command. So the
Yes, Ben.
feature
Okay.
is that's a es feature. So the native build will be generated on Expose Cloud, and you just have to register like which devices you want your app to run. So yeah, it will be just install the app and use it.
Yeah, one full ecosystem coming up together for React Native. That's interesting to
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
And also es submit command, that is just like magical. I mean, uh, if you have like tried distributing application via iOS app store, I think, then you know
Hmm.
like there's like a lot of things you need to know, like certifications, provisioning profiles and stuff, and all that is like magically handled by es submit command. So I mean it even it locks you on your Apple login, and it does like everything. Yeah, it just keeps on asking you questions, and you just have to accept, and your like build is submitted. So that's like really awesome.
Yeah,
It
it
kind of
works like.
reminds. Sorry,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Muskin. Go ahead. Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna say
just thinking
it.
that it kind of reminds me of how Next.js did it to React, right? How it built up an entire ecosystem. And that's what Expo is doing it to React Native, right? It's building up this entire flow where you can do it from 0 to 1. Like entire company can be set up just using Expo from development up until productionizing things right from 0 to 1. So that's interesting. Sorry, Peter, go ahead. I'm sorry to cut your line of thought.
No, so I was gonna say, Expo EA Submit is like a very well done Fastlane script on steroids. You know, like to tweak and get that Fastlane script takes a bit of a time,
Yeah.
but the EA Submit, it's just solid. And interestingly, there is this app.js conference happening right now, and Expo guys just announced EAS metadata. So
Hmm.
what that does is it allows you to it automates the screenshot capturing and all the other stored metadata submission automated. So that is also becoming like a one-click thing now. I've not seen it in extensive detail yet, but they just announced the new thing like I think a couple of hours back.
Awesome. Awesome. Live updates with Peter.
Very interesting. I mean, it's
Just
refreshing to hear lots of, praises to Expo because usually in conversations that involve React Native devs and native devs, they usually, are resistant to using Expo, saying that, Expo kind of limits you, things like that. And yeah, I'm happy to see that, it's actually making a lot of advances in the React Native world.
Yeah, in fact, like 6 months back, I would have said don't go with Expo. Right now, I would say just start with Expo, then eject
Yeah.
out if you need to. So made a lot of
Right.
tremendous amount of change.
I mean,
Right.
they're also giving back to the community, right? That's
Yeah,
what makes it great. I mean, they're not forking out; they're still giving back to
exactly.
React Native, so it totally makes sense. Yeah.
Cool. So let's move on, maybe talk about some new and exciting features that React Native, I mean, we can see on the horizon, like, for example, the new architecture like GSI, turbo modules. So what do you guys have to say about that?
I am damn excited about JSI. To be honest, I was listening to Aditya's talk in the afternoon, and the possibilities of using something like JSI. and being able to call our native modules in a synchronous fashion. It's as good as it gets, right? I mean, that's what you do at a native layer, and that's if you're getting the flexibility of doing that from a JavaScript layer, and the internal linkings, which are C++ linkings, are all code generated. It just makes it easy. I'm just skeptical of how fast can this be, because all your libraries would have to go through those upgrades too, like all your dependent ones. So how soon can we make that change and see things in production? But from an architectural point of view, I'm pretty damn excited to see that come out and in the React Native ecosystem.
Yeah, so like here also, I mean, the inspiration for, I mean, like synchronous executing is taken from the browser APIs, right? So if we do like document.create element, append child, like query a node, we get a reference of an object that is inside the browser engine. I mean, we can like directly set its width or like set its color, something like that. So yeah, here also we will be like able to directly create node append child like directly in a synchronous fashion. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I just hope that turbo modules land soon and the JSI process is all abstracted out from you, because I really don't want to dust up my old C++ books and figure out what is going on. And at least that's what my understanding is. You write most of your code in TypeScript or Flow, and it can generate the C bindings for you with the React Native CodeGen tool. So yeah, like hope you don't have to do a lot of custom C++ code like the current JSI libraries. Like I tried reading
Right.
one of them and I was like, what is going on?
I mean, that's kind of like what most people must be feeling with when JSI came out. Okay, now do I have to learn another language now to do
Right.
React Native? I mean, wasn't Java and Swift or Objective C not enough already? Do I have to switch over to C++ as well now? I mean, that's a common question when you hear when somebody talks about JSI, but I'm guessing that all will be abstracted out. But when I look at the advantages, I look like, for example, I was looking at it the other day, like on layout is something that you can call on view and all of these things, right? And that's like a asynchronous process to
Right.
get .x, .y, .h, .w on any element. And then when you look at web, you have something called as get computed style, which just gives you synchronously. I mean, it's expensive. You shouldn't be using it all too often, but still you get it, right? And that's just the power of synchronous, right? Now you can, in the, whatever, you can immediately do things that you want with it. Imagine running pan responder animations after you know your sizes beforehand, right? Without having to delay it by a frame or how many ever frames that it returns after. I mean, its possibilities are crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a few new libraries are already using it under the hood, reanimated gesture handler,
Right.
and
Yeah.
MMKV. We all seen the like performance benefits of all of them.
One very interesting library that I'm really bullish on is React Native Vision Camera.
Hmm.
It's from Mark, the same guy who's working on MMKV, and he's working on a bunch of awesome stuff like Wishlist. Wishlist is a JSI backed list implementation, which will apparently take away the dreaded white space when you scroll while I issue.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, React Native Vision Camera, like it's a camera plugin, of course, but more than that, it allows you to write JSI or JavaScript functions which run on the native thread, which can analyze or process the frames. So, for example, a couple of plugins that already exist are like one which works for a face detection as a face detection plugin. There's another for QR code scanning and OCR scanning, and the whole thing works by bypassing the bridge. So it's like damn fast, and uh, possibly you could build something like Instagram filters in React
Hmm.
Native, which was seemed impossible like a while back.
Right. Is this something that how even Reanimated is kind of approaching the problem using worklets, that it will then push
Yeah.
over to the UI thread and then that guy will handle all of those things? Is it
Yeah,
similar?
so initially Vision Camera was directly using worklets. I mean, it had
Oh,
Reanimated as a dependency.
right,
I think they've recently moved out of it, but I'm not entirely sure.
right, right.
So it was direct, like in fact, directly using Reanimated's worklet capability.
Hmm. That's interesting. Bunch of new things, man. I mean, you mentioned about MMKV as well, right? MMKV async storage has existed as long as React Native has,
Right.
right? And becoming 40 times faster than async storage, and even Watermelon DB by a factor of 4 or 10. I don't remember. I mean, that's insanely fast.
Yeah. So,
And
but that benchmark, you should probably take it with a pinch of salt in the
pinch of salt,
sense,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, or like all benchmarks, of course. Like the async storage versus MMKV one makes sense because they both serve the same purpose. You store key value pairs uh, uh, right, in a DB. Watermelon gives you querying on top of it. It's not some
Right.
like it's a full blown SQLite database, right? But yeah, I mean, I've been using MMKV successfully at Savage for persisting any like small bits of data. The biggest change is that now you don't. It's not an async storage layer anymore. It's fully synchronized, and you can write like a couple of listeners on those. So all our auth layer stuff is on MMKV, and it just works really really well.
Nice, man. Nice.
Right. And one more thing I think we have to discuss about this GSI and the new architecture is that these concepts will slowly start moving into the base components that React Native itself provides. So, for example, view, text, or the scroll view, flat list. Once the Fabric renderer or the GSI concepts land on these components, the React Native uh, library, the framework as out of the box becomes a lot more performant than what we have right now. So we as users, even if we kind of use slower packages like React Native async storage, it would the major performance gains would be coming out of these the
Right.
base components like Vue and Flatlist. So I'm more excited about these things landing on the core packages like Vue and text and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so one big promise with the Fabric renderer along with turbo modules is that they will get rid of the infamous flickers that we have when certain pages load. That's what I'm really excited about. It's a very minor thing, but it looks bad when your app is loading up. Why is that flickering? Why is this form field flickering?
Right.
Uh, it just doesn't give that. It takes a lot of effort to polish and get it working very well. And I have to say, like, Anandu, like the work you guys do at Small Case is like really really awesome. Like I really love the app. I mean, I'm a daily user it every month,
Okay.
for SAPs, but insane stuff from Small Case.
Yeah,
Glad
man.
to
So
hear that. Thank you.
is it like a pure greenfield app, the small case app?
No, so the small case app is not brownfield at all. It is purely React Native, very low custom native code that we write. So we try to do everything on the React Native layer itself, and then we obviously do care a lot about performance, but then we also don't over optimize. Like we don't prematurely optimize. Uh, I think we just uh, care about writing performant and good code, and then that shows up in the app that it generates. So
Nice.
talking about performance, what do you guys, um, any tips that you guys, keep in mind when you're building React Native apps to keep like a base level performance in apps?
So yeah, I mean we are using lists, like a lot of lists, and so yeah, I mean make sure like you are following all the recommendations given in Flatlist documentation, that like if possible you implement get item layout, and all your render items are like memoized items, so they are like don't re-render unnecessarily. And yeah, I mean, lists are the like biggest like performance, like they are the ones who that create the biggest performance issues. And we're also using recycler list view in our feed. Yeah, so that is really cool. And yeah, for benchmarking mostly we use this the performance monitor in React Native. So you can see your like JS thread FPS and UI thread FPS. So based on that, and like if JS thread is dropping, then we mostly look into like which component is re-rendering. So there are some packages that can help you with that. Mostly we do console log or see like what issues are there. And also there's a cool Flipper plugin now that we can use to monitor those threads. And yeah, and if there's like UI thread performance is dropping, then you can check it in Xcode and just see like if memory consumption is like really high, maybe like you are like creating too many images or video objects. So yeah, I mean, in our app we had like lots of videos and lots of images. So we just noticed that like if you mount more than 4 to 5 video instances, like video instance can be like from React Native Video or Expo AV, but if you mount more than that, then app crashes. So yeah, I mean, those are the things. So we after that we started using this on viewable item change from flat list, and only mount video instances if the item is visible. And even if you mount the video instance, it will still crash even if you don't play the video. So yeah, so for that we analyzed the memory consumption from Xcode, and later then we found that okay, so we better we don't mount the video at all. So yeah, we are just mounting it on like when the item is visible. And yeah, and also I mean, the export tools can be really helpful if you want to check out the layout hierarchy, like how many views are mounted and if they are not getting like deallocated and things.
Interesting. I wanted to add a few things. Like for the list view, again, we use Recycler list view, which is sort of an in-house solution that we have. It sort of works out of the box for deterministic, non-deterministic scenarios for us. Uh, Image problem is something that I think happens with everyone once they start rendering long lists with images and everything. And one thing that we saw for videos and everything is that you could render just the thumbnail, and once things actually people end up pressing rotate and bring back the video so that you don't really take up the memory of a video in that card, right? Even though you might not be playing it, it gets mounted and gets shown. So that is something you might look at. Nishan, I'm guessing you might already be doing it. But again, image caching on top. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this was more like a TikTok like interface where users should be able to like swipe and it should play. So like before switching to TikTok like interface, we had like simple scroll feed. So there like yeah, I mean, it's like continuous scrolling and not like swiping. So that time we had like yeah, like see if user is on the screen and then play. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, actually we switched to that solution where you just show the thumbnail first, and as soon as that view is visible, you switch it to video.
Right. I mean, there's a delay to it, but I think that's kind of
So
manageable.
yeah, actually we added a like interesting way for to prevent that delay. So we started using a sort of window like thing. So like you load 3 videos and play the center one and pause to above and below. So you go to like next, you do the same like for like every swipe. Yeah, that
It's like
prevented
a
the delay.
pagination for videos in that case, right?
Yeah.
Right. Right. Nice. Nice, yeah. But to add to that, we also like for performance, I think we also ended up using a lot of native, IDs like Android Studio for a lot of memory profiling. How were our apps doing in terms of when it comes to profiling? It's also end user profiling, like how is our app performing in terms of crashes and errors and all of those things. So we were actively monitoring our ANRs, which were being logged at a Firebase level for Android and similarly for iOS as well. So that also becomes critical. And I think it becomes very critical to see how is your app doing in release modes, right? With all your ProGuard plugins on, all of your bundle sizes as optimized as they can be, right? And then running benchmarks on top of, one is FPS benchmarks, of course, and then between devices, like the range of devices that you end up supporting, right? One is the low end device and one is the absolute high end device, and how does your app end up performing in terms of what are your metrics for, let's say, TTIs, FCP, and whatnot, right? So all of those have to be in a range that you define for your app to be across your devices that you support. So that is also pretty critical for us, right? Because we do support a bunch of devices.
Yeah, at Flipkart scale, it is obviously very critical.
Yeah.
So actually, I mean, I think we don't like we just test it like for iOS 13 in simulator and not below that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, at Flipkart scale, it's very much needed to support lowest end device.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of necessary at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Anantu, you are on mute, I guess.
Sorry. Yeah. So speaking about performance, what do you guys think about, comparison between React Native with other libraries out there like Flutter or Ionic or things like that, where, Flutter, promises better performance than React Native, and Ionic, I think, is just ease of development because of that. You guys have any thoughts on that? Why you would choose React Native over there?
Yeah.
So
So I recently came across this podcast from the Infinite Red guys where I think it was Gant Laborde who said, Flutter is better than React Native in all the wrong ways. You know. So I think the underlying thing is, the you have to get developers. Like, let's face it, right? It's not technology for the sake of technology. It's technology to solve problems, and we need people to solve problems, and then we need people who know a particular technology to do it. So it's just easier to hire for React Native developers, or let me put it this way: it's not easier to hire for React Native developers. It's easier to hire for web developers and then train them to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
React Native devs.
Well said.
And yeah, and then you know, JavaScript, yes, it gets a bad rap, but the world runs on JavaScript, so there's a lot of people who get into JavaScript as their first programming language. So it's just easier to hire with React Native and React. And like initially for Savage also, I started evaluating Flutter, and then there was just majorly one thing that killed it, which was being able to do code push. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's insanely valuable feature. If anyone has worked with App Store, they know that waiting for app reviews the night of your release is a nerve-wracking experience. Um, so yeah, like for those two things alone, like React Native is the winner for me. And then add on top of that, the whole JSI and Fabric renderer coming up. It's just going to get him even more, valuable. And for that matter, React Native Skia is a library, that's coming up, which kind of has similar API to Flutter. So you could potentially write Flutter apps in React Native. So what's the point anymore?
Like JavaScript is here, where are you?
Right, exactly.
Right.
And they recently demoed React Native Skia running on web too. So it's like a killer package that's gonna kill Flutter, hopefully.
Really.
Not trying to be controversial, but
No, I
React Native.
totally agree. I mean, there is some bias to our decisions, obviously, because we've been using it for a while now. But all the right points, right? With JSI coming in, all the asynchronous flows go out of the box, like out of the picture, and then you have code push, and you don't have to learn a new language, right? You don't have to learn a new system of how things work. and the ecosystem is by far better than what it is for Flutter, right? So you have a bunch of uh, packages coming out, full blown companies working on it. Let's say Airbnb did first, and now Shopify doing the same thing, right, with React Native. So that's just, and working not because they're supposed to, working because they like the framework and library as such, right? So that is one great thing that I feel React Native has over Flutter.
Although I have to say one thing, I mean, it might sound a little controversial, but what I found with Flutter was the quality of their native packages or native third-party packages felt better than React Native packages. It could be because, it's mostly JavaScript developers trying to write native code, wherein Flutter, like since it's backed by Google, a lot of native developers have kind of gone into the Flutter route. So that felt like a good place where Flutter was doing really well. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't followed Flutter development for like quite some time now. But initially, at least the native libraries were good quality.
Also, I mean, there are like a lot of widgets and a lot of like component libraries built and shipped by Google in Flutter. So that's like very easy for people to use that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But I think Flutter gets a bit of a, I mean, it gets criticism for not maintaining its own widgets. So, like, I've seen on the Reddit Flutter subreddit where, the Flutter team inside Google is not a very large team, right? They're a set of small, very passionate engineers for Flutter and Dart. But they have such a huge library of widgets that Flutter natively ships that they find it hard to like maintain all those widgets all the time. So like Android can come up with a new uh, like new component. So the Flutter team has to build that same thing in Flutter, right? So apparently it was taking them time to build their own widget. So uh, unlike the lean core approach that React Native takes, where the core React team just maintains the core functioning of React Native, and then everything else is left to the community.
Right. I mean, that's an interesting point of how are they uh, approaching this whole uh, transformation, right? Of, let's say, people adopting Flutter. Should everything become like a marketplace where everybody comes in and pitches, or should you in-house own the widgets, right? These are two different models of how the components get started in the whole developer world, right? So, yeah, let's see who wins. My money is on React Native as of now.
I mean, yeah, we have Scan also. I don't think I'll be learning Flutter like very soon. No.
So all
What
this
is one
praise
of
for
the
React Native, what is like one pain point that you guys feel the most when developing in React Native?
Okay. I think for me is that when it becomes to crude problems, when it comes to actual problems that are behind your JavaScript world, you kind of feel a little lost, right? Okay, should I go into native and should I go and fix it? Should I look for a package? Does it solve it all of a sudden? Because it's hard to have expertise in all three domains, right? iOS, Android, and JavaScript, right? You occasionally become a master of one, leave aside becoming a master of three, right? So that is a tricky road to take that path, right? Then you need help of other people who are masters in these two other domains and figure that problem out. So it becomes a problem that you alone can't probably fix it, right? You need a team of who know this better. So that is one problem that I felt is hardcore to React Native developers, that they know one domain very well, but then when the problem goes outside that, what do they do? It becomes hard.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean that's really true. And if developers are coming more from web background and Yeah, but I really think we should like learn at least iOS or Android, like have a little bit idea of, so that it can be easy to debug stuff. Uh,
Yep.
Yeah, one pain point that this is a very nitpicky pain point, but working with keyboards on React Native,
oh yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's because it's our app has a lot of like couple of forms in there, and then so like working with the keyboard is one thing, and then working with the keyboard gracefully is a whole like a whole another thing, right? We can get it to so that like the UI jumps around and the keyboard kind of works, but smoothly animating stuff out of the way and things like that is currently a little painful. Um, then um, the when Hermes came out, the debugging was a little bit of a pain, but it's kind of like stabilized now with Flipper working really well.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, like I really can't think of much else right now. Like there was a point where like the whole state management thing was a little bit of a pain, but it's kind of as I've gotten used to it, it's become fine. I mean, it works.
Nice.
Cool. I think we are almost out of time. Maybe we can end this discussion with each of you telling us like what you're most excited about with React Native, and yeah, and any final thoughts.
GSI, hands down. I mean, I don't even have to think twice.
Great.
Yeah, new architecture and writing universal apps with that.
Nice. Yeah, like I want to see how like Fabric Renderer will make things better for the ecosystem, and I'm also really looking forward to React Native Skia, and I think that will be the key to bringing out a lot of well polished, full of micro animations kind of apps. Even though Reanimated is there, I mean Reanimated and Skia will work together very well to give out like that popping, you know, apps like slick animated, like super cool apps. That's what I'm looking forward.
Great.
Awesome.
Awesome. So I think with that we can conclude this talk. It was great talking to you guys. Thank you.
Good
Thank you,
talking to
everyone.
everyone. Thank you.
Great one, guys. Thank you.
Bye bye.